Well, that leads me to a question that I was on the fence about whether or not to ask, but I'm going to go ahead now. On page 15, there is a dog that, for copyright reasons, clearly is not Snoopy, but looks just a little bit like Snoopy. Is that your homage there?
Well, I love Charlie Brown and I love Snoopy. I think I'll neglect won't answer that,
I
but
have set you up in an impossible position. We'll say, oh, it's just the dog character.
it's just another black and white beagle. What can you say? Uh,
Where where is page 15? Oh, there it is. We'll hold it up here for the YouTube audience.
oh yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where Max gets in the elevator to go down to Mindy's lab, and it travels sort of in a labyrinth of ways to finally get down to her. And that was something when things like that took place in books when I was a kid, where there was something that was extra fun and extra silly that maybe offered up these little jokes because in book two, I have he tries to go down to Mindy's lab and there's a different kind of elevator and he goes down through and you see these little creatures around a cauldron and they're saying oompa oompa, and then by the time you get down you might realize this looks very similar to the glass elevator from Willy Wonka. And Max says that's you should never buy an elevator from a chocolate factory. And so I do try to have those homages to some of the authors and the books that inspired me, especially because I'm hoping that if someone goes and reads Willy Wonka or knows Snoopy, that they'll be like, I know that, and I think it's so fun when you think when you're part of the joke.
Well, obviously there's a fair amount of Batman in here with Cat Crusader. There's at least one panel where Max is holding up a car, which is very iconic. Superman was Amazing Comics.
Sure.
Or no, I'm thinking Spider-Man. Gosh, I'm embarrassing myself.
Act number one. Yeah.
Thank you. Action amazing. Yes. And then there's I think a bit of Shazam in here as well. What are
Yeah.
some that I might have missed? What else are you making homages to?
I'm trying to think of some of the references. There's always a certain level of Chuck Jones, Bugs Bunny cartoons that are flowing through my brain. I hear a lot of as I'm drawing, I hear a lot of the Bugs Bunny, the soundtrack, the orchestral music in the background. And I would say that Agent M, who is the I would say he's pretty evil in this book. The grumpy mouse who is behind the plot to steal the space meatball. I imagine him sounding an awful lot like Yosemite Sam, and which is funny because years ago when I was in college, I kept applying for sending in my artwork to comic book companies, and I had drawn this one, and it was about a guy who was fighting monsters, and it was very much like Hellblazer, the comic book, John Constantine from DC Comics, except he had a samurai sword. And at one point, I got a comment back like, "This looks nice, but it's a little too much like a almost like a Looney Tunes cartoon with your humor." And I was like, "Thank you very much." And then I didn't realize they were telling me that was not the way to. I had obviously not gotten the memo that comics needed to be darker. And so that's why I'm so excited about middle grade books, because I think I'm getting to do a lot of the fun style of comics that I enjoyed as a kid. That as Batman, depending on the Batman you pick up, the Batman comic, it may be for kids. It's probably not for kids. And when I was a kid, when I was 8, any Batman you picked up was okay for kids. And that's one thing I like about being mainly in schools and libraries and ways to get directly to the kids.
Well, I mean, do you ever see yourself doing like a Max Meow Returns? It's 20 years in the future when he's retired and he comes back and it's uber dark.
Well, I will tell you that Max Meow 4, the fourth Max Meow book, if we were to do a Max Meow fourth book, deals with, I wanted to discuss theories about time travel. And some of those ideas, that might actually be an idea that pops up. I have to say I haven't developed anything yet, but that was definitely something that I had considered.
What I heard is you just promised me Frank Miller references left and right when that happens.
Well, you know, when I was doing one of my earlier books, I did a comic called Buzzboy, which is about a teen sidekick. It's pretty much like a goofy Robin character who never really grows up. And in the story I was doing, I wanted to have a Batman type character, and I based it upon my friend's comic shop name, which is in Delaware, Captain Blue Hen Comics. So I created a character called Captain Blue Hen, and the entire 3 pages he was on, I was riffing on the All-Star Batman book, where Batman is, being gritty and even more so than Dark Knight. And I was kind of making fun of it because I thought it had become a cliche. And boy, I've never had so many people apparently get mad, I'm mad at me because apparently you can't make fun of Frank Miller.
Oh, of course not.
But I definitely will be tying into that. I have to. I think there's going to be some Back to the Future stuff in that one. Anything I can do to sort of tap into these movies and TV shows that I watched way too much of when I was younger.
Well, here's an opportunity to alienate friends, so we'll assume that we're going to stick with the biggest names. But what are some of the main big comics and big cartoons that have influenced you?
Well, like I said, Bugs Bunny cartoons. Growing up, it really as a kid, I loved Scooby-Doo, and but what really intrigued me were the monsters in Scooby-Doo. And it's funny because then I loved Super Friends, and the main art influence from that I've picked up is an artist by the name of Alex Toth, who also helped create Space Ghost. And he did a lot of the monsters and characters that were background characters in Scooby-Doo. He worked on Johnny Quest. And there was something about he really broke things down to a simple line. And so the artwork really intrigued me. Anything that was Hanna-Barbera in the early 70s and early 80s was probably had some Alex Toth in it. Growing up, I was reading a lot of Batman, but it was collections. So it had comics from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, it ran the gamut from Neil Adams, who's just a genius of all of that, all the way back to Bob Kane and Bill Finger and the original Batman artists. And I feel like I picked up a little bit of each one of those things as I've been working on. And but it's funny because now I realize there were some influences that were there. I just didn't realize how much they were affecting me. And it's like Charles Schultz and just the way he portrayed the character of Charlie Brown. And I just remember feeling so sad for Charlie Brown when things didn't go his way. Like I was like Linus. When they would do the Halloween special for Peanuts, I thought maybe this year the Great Pumpkin would come, and and I kind of want to try to have some of those elements where there's a lot of silliness going on, but it's just like that friend that always makes jokes. There's also like sad times as well, and I'm trying to think whatever. So the Batman '60s show was a big influence. I was just, if it was sort of bigger than life, I really enjoyed it. And it's funny, some of the jokes that pop up as I'm writing, I'll be there like, I don't know where I got that joke from. But I will tell you this, the original plan for book 2 or 3 was going to be that a superhero comes out of retirement, a superhero dog, and he looks an awful lot like the Dark Knight. And this is a couple of years ago. Dogman was fairly new, and this is why my son Will became so important to Max Meow. Is I think like the 3rd or 4th book came out of Dogman, and I had already planned on having this character called the Bark Knight. I was like, oh, this is genius. No one will think of this, the Bark Knight. And we I always would, we went to the comic shop and picked up the latest Dogman, and Will is reading. It might have been, I don't know if it was Lord of the Fleas or what it was. The first time they started calling Dogman as a superhero the Bark Knight, and he's like, Dad, Dave Pilkey ripped you off. And, and I was like, nope. And he's like, you can't use it. I go, no, I can't. And he goes, but how did he know that? And I just said, you know what? I think we watched all the same TV shows and read all the same comic books. And, that's bound to happen, but Will saved me from, untold criticism and possibly litigation. Who knows?
I don't know if you can. Well, maybe you can sue on a parody of a parody.
I don't know. I think I think I'm just a little too tiny for them to worry about. But it would be one of those things where kids who read books, read comics and graphic novels, they read all of them. So I'm sure I would have heard about it in a letter pretty quickly.
Well, the thing, and I know that I'm speaking as an outsider for the comics industry and the art industry, because God knows I just don't have the talent. But I would think there is enough recycling of ideas throughout comics that there would be a little bit more leeway. Like, Bishop and X-Men comes out mysteriously right after the Terminator film blows up and does really well.
Right.
There's 5 other different Bishop type characters in other universes. Everybody's got some version of the guy that runs really fast. Everybody's got the villain that freezes.
Yeah, well, that is true. There is an awful lot of connection, and we all pull from each other. And in some ways, I think that complements each other. Even going down to Shakespeare was known as, he would swipe whole parts of plays and incorporate them into his play if it worked well. So not that I'm likening myself to Shakespeare, but maybe, Shakespeare of comic book cats is not really a title I can claim yet.
Well, I don't know. Long enough timeline, everything else goes out of print, and Max Meow's still around. You get all the credit.
I know, and that's a pretty durable book. We've got some nice varnish on there, so it could withstand the test of time.
If the nuclear apocalypse happens, cockroaches and Max Meow.